Good afternoon and good morning again, everyone. I believe we have our rescheduled speaker. Before we turn to him and ask him to speak for the next 30 to 40 minutes, let me just make an announcement that unfortunately, as I think was already previewed in the email from Andrea, we won't be able to have either Mr. Lynch Favre from the OECS or Miss Ambassador Colin Murdoch, who we were hoping to reschedule to speak this morning. Ambassador Murdoch, unfortunately, is otherwise detained in Geneva. So luckily, what we do have is a rearrangement of the session. Mr. Eden Charles has luckily for us, fortunately, agreed to move his presentation up to an earlier slot, which I know didn't come very easily in terms of his scheduling, and for that I'm even more grateful to him. Originally, we wanted him to speak earlier on in the program, but he has a very, very busy schedule to talk along with Professor Berry about some of the management and legal regimes. And luckily, he will be able to talk about that in his presentation today. But in addition, Mr. Charles is, I'm just looking to make sure that I don't miss any of his accolades, but he is going to be able to speak to us on a range of topics, which is why we have titled his presentation, not just looking at the governance regimes on which he's very well placed to speak, but also to help us look a little bit more forward at some of CARICOM's opportunities and challenges as it relates to the blue economy. So let me introduce him formally. I've only put one of his titles, which is maybe the one that I'm most familiar with because I'm a UWI lecturer. But he is a lecturer at the law faculty in the St. Augustine campus. But in addition to that, Mr. Charles serves on the Commission of Small Island States and the Legal Experts Committee. He's a special representative of the Secretary General of the International Seabed Authority for the Enterprise and chairman of the advisory board of the One Ocean Hub, University of Strathclyde, UKRI, and a former ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary to the UN. I'm sure I did not list all of your titles, Mr. Charles, but I'm sure in your introduction to the students, it will be very clear how well placed and that your authority on this topic. So we'll wait. Please proceed, but we expect more of the students to file in. And so it's over to you to talk about the international regimes relevant to the blue economy, and then also talk about, based on your experience and your positions, of what are the opportunities and challenges you see for OECS countries in space. So over to you. Thank you.
Okay, good day, everybody, wherever you are in this world. I want to thank Dr. Remy and the team for inviting me to speak on this important occasion. It's been a long time in coming. So let me see firstly if I could share my screen and so on, and you let me know if you are seeing it. So thank you again, Eve, for inviting me to speak at this important event. The blue economy is so critical to our very survival as not only Caribbean nationals, but also as members of this planet, as a small island developing states who subscribe to the principle of inter and intra-generational equity, bearing in mind that the resources are on loan to us, and we should also continue to bear in mind the important role we have to play in bequeathing the resources for the rest of in the future. I want to situate the discussion firstly in the context of the United Nations the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. And it has been my practice within recent time to call the convention by its proper name. We in the Caribbean must take ownership of the convention. The convention should properly be called the Montego Bay Convention. Why? It was adopted in Montego Bay, Jamaica, 40 years ago this December. I'm saying this because we must be confident in our ability as Caribbean people. International law, international treaties, generally speaking, bear the name of the city or place that the treaty or convention has been adopted. So we speak about the Geneva Convention, we speak about the Geneva Conventions, we speak about the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, we speak on the New York Convention in terms of international commercial arbitration, the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Why not the Montego Bay Convention, otherwise known as the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, right? All CARICOM states are parties to this convention. It's often referred, and correctly so, as the Constitution for Oceans and Seas. Almost everything that you want to know about the oceans and seas in terms of governance are either fleshed out in this very compendious international convention, or there is a framework which led to later work being done to implement certain parts of this landmark convention, which continues to be so relevant after 40 years. Now, you cannot talk about the blue economy without situating it in a legal context. If we are speaking about looking at the resources for development, if we are looking at SDG 14, life below water, we need of the Sustainable Development Goals, we need to situate that as well in the context of obligations and rights which flow from the Montego Bay Convention, otherwise known as the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Why that is so? Because CARICOM states parties to the convention are allowed to have certain rights. Some of those rights are sovereign rights. Some of them are based on sovereignty in terms of the resources. So why is this important? The rule of law in the oceans and seas must set the tone, must provide the framework for our ability to explore and exploit the living and non-living marine resources for the purposes of our sustainable development, for the purpose of developing the blue economy. So my first slide here speaks to a regime that was created by the Montego Bay Convention, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, referred to as the Exclusive Economic Zone, EEZ, or some people say EEZ. This was a new creature of UNCLOS. The Law of the Sea did not begin with the 1982 Convention. It's the most modern expression of it. There were conventions before that on the Law of the Sea, like the 1958 Geneva Convention on the Continental Shelf and so on. This convention, however, created as a compromise the Exclusive Economic Zone. A state, and all CARICOM states have done so, have to, a state party to the convention, that is those states which have either signed and ratified or acceded to the convention, must declare an exclusive economic zone. Which is what
Mr. Charles, sorry, yeah, but I don't know if you want to be on the second slide because you're still in the first.
No, not as yet, not as yet.
Sorry.
Yeah, right? And this convention provides for, this regime provides a formula for how states are able to explore and exploit the living and non-living marine resources of this area. Article 62 specifically speaks to the utilization of the living resources, right? And Article 62. It speaks about how we should use our fisheries resources. Article 63 expresses what we talk about in terms of marine resources, especially fish stocks, which lie within the EEZs or EEZs of 2 or more coastal states, and how these resources are to be managed. What have we done in the Caribbean? We have tried to manage these resources which are found, which traverse different EEZs, by establishing the CARICOM fisheries mechanism, regional fisheries mechanism, which has elaborated a CARICOM common fisheries policy. Fish and the byproducts of fish, their audience, are critical to our livelihood based as a source of food, as a source of employment, and also as a source of doing marine scientific research. There cannot be any discussion on the development of the blue economy without the focus on fisheries. So the convention requires states to come together, even within the EEZ, to address matters relating to the management, the conservation and management of fisheries. Within the region as well, there have been fisheries agreements. For example, in the past, there were Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago fisheries agreement, allowing Barbados nationals to share the surplus of the fisheries resources within the Trinidad and Tobago EEZ based on negotiations. That issue ended up before an arbitral tribunal. After the negotiations broke down between Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago, it ended up before an Annex 7, Part 15 tribunal of UNCLOS. But have our efforts at the conservation and management of the fisheries resources been successful? We have tried as a region, but there have been tremendous challenges. We talk about opportunities and challenges. The opportunities are there. We are state party to the convention. There's a vibrant fisher folk community in the region. We have our regional common fisheries policy administered by a mechanism, but there are challenges. What are some of the challenges? Capacity constraints and inadequate transfer of marine technology. Many CARICOM states have not been able to fully utilize the resources of their EEZ as a consequence of limited capacity and lack of transfer of technology. This Montego Bay Convention, the audience, this UN Convention on the Law of the Sea provides for both capacity building and transfer of marine technology. And although it is true that there has been some capacity building intra-regionally and beyond the region, assisting the region, we have seen very, very limited transfer of marine technology. It's like the Cinderella provision of the convention. And in moving forward, we need to advocate for the transfer of marine technology to ensure that we're in a position to adequately exercise our sovereign rights over these living resources. Yeah? If you're unable to do so, we would not be able to fully realize the prospects of the blue economy. Other challenges are the impacts of climate change. The latest report I have, although there have been reports subsequently, looks at an FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization report of 2018. And it estimates that by 2050, there'll be a reduction in global fisheries resources, including in the Caribbean. What are we going to do about that? Are we going to use the multilateral fora to lobby, to advocate for better financing, for example? We need to develop as a region a more sustainable and resilient fishery sector. But if we are doing that and we are confronted based on the FAO and other reports that we are confronted with the deleterious effects of climate change, we have to look at how we adapt to climate change, how we mitigate to climate change, adaptation and mitigation strategies. That has to be, how are we going to do that? There's a CARICOM Climate Change Center in Belize that is working on this. There needs to be greater collaboration between the member states and this regional body in Belize, the CARICOM Climate Change Center, and also with international partners like the Green Climate Fund. We need to strengthen fisheries production. We need to strengthen fisheries governance, among other things, as we seek to move forward to ensure that the fisheries resources continue to play more than it is playing in development of a Blue Climate Fund. But then we're also confronted by other issues. IUU fishing, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. What are we doing? Are we combining ourselves adequately with regional security partners to deal with the issue of illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, where industrial fishing lines way beyond the Caribbean region, from Europe and Asia, come and prey, P-R-E-Y, on our fishing resources and sometimes get away with impunity? We ourselves have to deal with some destructive fishing practices. We need to tackle some of the destructive fishing practices. Overfishing. One of the issues which bedeviled the Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago negotiations was the issue of overfishing in terms of the flying fish stock. But the situation has improved considerably. Are we contributing towards, for example, habitat destruction? In our rush for the development of oil and gas resources, sometimes seismic surveys have the effect of causing underwater noise pollution. And as a consequence, not underwater noise pollution, yes. And as a consequence of that, affecting the habitat that the fish stocks are, and they move away. We need also to focus on the issue of plastic pollution. And I'm hopeful that CARICOM would play a very robust role in the negotiation of this new treaty on plastic pollution. So we have spoken about the water column, that is from the baseline from which the breadth of the territorial sea is measured, seawards, the water column, 200 nautical miles. You have your EEZ, and you're entitled, CARICOM states are entitled to that. But where there are overlapping claims, you have to delimit, like Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago delimited by way of arbitration. Grenada and Trinidad and Tobago delimited by way of negotiations and so on. Trinidad and Tobago, decades before that, delimited with Venezuela and so on. But why is the continental shelf important? Article 76 defines the configuration of the continental shelf. It's based on natural prolongation. It speaks to the natural prolongation of your mass, of your land mass, seawards, right? Below the seabed, up to the continental margin. And Article 77 of that convention indicates the rights of the coastal state over its continental shelf. These rights are ab initio rights. In other words, they originate as from the beginning. Unlike the EEZ rights, where a state has to proclaim that it has an EEZ, regarding the continental shelf, a state does not have to indicate that it proclaims. It states it's analogous to its land territory because it's a natural prolongation of your mass, of your land mass that juts into the sea, and so on. And I've put some examples on the screen here where there have been delimitation of the continental shelf between various CARICOM states, Guyana, Suriname, TT Grenada, Barbados, TNT, and so on. All right, I don't have to see me for this part of it. Yes, so I was indicating before that this UN convention, this Montego Bay Convention as properly called, allows CARICOM states to declare that they are states with an exclusive economic zone. And many CARICOM countries have done, all CARICOM countries have done that. And they are able to explore and exploit the resources of this EEZ, which is measured 200 nautical miles from the baseline from which the breadth of the territorial sea is measured. In other words, it's measured from the low water mark line, or in some cases from the archipelagic baselines. Have we been able as a region to adequately utilize the resources of the EEZ towards the development of the blue economy? Are you seeing Eve? Janice? Next slide. Are you seeing it?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So I'm saying that the framework provided by the law of the convention requires states where fish stocks occur within the EEZ of 2 or more coastal states, or both within the EEZ and an area beyond or adjacent it, to come together to conserve and manage these resources. CARICOM has attempted to do so, to the establishment of the CARICOM Regional Fisheries Mechanism, which has elaborated a CARICOM Common Fisheries Policy, right? This has allowed us in the region to implement our rights and obligation under the convention relating to fisheries. And we're looking at from Article 61, 60, 61, 62, 63, and so on. And we have been able to do it reasonably successful, but there are challenges. What are some of the challenges? Capacity constraints and inadequate transfer of marine technology, right? So that is why when we go to the international forum and we negotiate, we speak to the need to develop a capacity building, which in most instances should not be something that CARICOM countries must negotiate out of. It must be consistent in all of the blue economy, in all of the treaties that are germane, in all of the conventions that are germane towards the development of the blue economy. But you see this last part here, transfer of marine technology. Transfer of marine technology has been the Cinderella provision of the Montego Bay Convention, of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Without transfer of technology, states in the Caribbean region are not able to adequately harness the resources of the EEZ for their development. So these are some of the challenges we are facing in the 21st century, notwithstanding the fact that in December this year, we commemorate the adoption of UNCLOS, the opening for signature of UNCLOS, that landmark treaty. But there are other challenges that are facing us in terms of our fish sector, in terms of our living resources sector. The FAO, in a report in 2018, estimates that there will be a reduction in global fisheries by 2050, right? A significant reduction in fisheries, including the reduction of the fish stock in the CARICOM region. This is significant. Fish provides employment, a source of food, nutrition, livelihood. It's also important for marine scientific research. If there is going to be a reduction in global fish stocks as a consequence of destructive fishing practices, as a consequence of climate change, and what are we going to do about it as a region? The region needs to build its capacity. It needs to build a more sustainable and resilient fishery sector. The region needs to seek financing to tackle issues relating to adaptation and mitigation strategies to combat climate change. Do we have additional funding? Is the CARICOM Climate Change Center in Belize adequately equipped to deal with adaptation and mitigation strategies? Is the Green Climate Fund providing the Green Climate Fund established within the framework of the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement? Is it providing the type of assistance to the CARICOM region to deal with adaptation and mitigation? And as a means of that, helping us to strengthen our fisheries production, improve our fishery security and our governance arrangements. Is that happening? Is the CARICOM region addressing sufficiently the incidents of IUU fishing, illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing, where you have on longliners from industrialized nations who prey, PREY, on the fisheries resources of the hapless littoral states of the CARICOM archipelago. Is that being done? Are we providing sufficient security to patrol our borders? Do we have sufficient resources to address IUU fishing? Or are we turning a blind eye to IUU fishing because we get other means of support from some of the fisheries longliners, like the Taiwanese and others and so on? Are we concerned of that? And then what about what happens on the continental shelf, which we're going to get to after, and the exploration and exploitation for oil and gas, where seismic research sometimes causes so much noise, yeah? And as a consequence of that, fish stocks move away, and that results in a destruction of the habitat of our fish resources. What is happening? We talk about building the economy, the blue economy. These are challenges that we need to deal with. And what about plastic pollution in the marine environment? Are we contributing as a region, or are we seeking to reduce the incidence of plastic pollution, right, which is poisonous to our fish stock? Are we going to participate very robustly in the negotiations for this new global plastic pollution treaty? These are some of the challenges we have to face as a region. And if we do not address these challenges adequately, the opportunities presented by the abundance of the resources, in some cases not so abundant anymore, would be more like a dream deferred. So we need to get up and get and act with alacrity, right? Are you seeing the slides, Eve? Talk to me, huh? Yeah? Good. So we have spoken about the regime of the exclusive economic zone, the water column. But below the water column, there exists another regime called the continental shelf. What is the continental shelf? When you get the time, I want you to read Article 76 of this Montego Bay Convention, this UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, which defines the continental shelf, and it will tell you how important this continental shelf is. It's based on what we call in the international law of the sea natural prolongation. And Article 76(1) it provides as follows: the continental shelf of a coastal state comprises the seabed and subsoil of the submarine areas that extend beyond its territorial sea throughout the natural prolongation of its land territory to the outer edge of the continental margin, or to a distance of 200 nautical miles from the baseline from which the breadth of the territorial sea is measured, and so on. So your continental shelf, pretty simply, is like the sunken part of your land that juts out below the sea, in the seabed and the subsoil. Unlike the regime of the EEZ, where a state has to declare that it has an EEZ, that's 200 nautical miles water column, the continental shelf rights are ab initio rights. There is no need for a state to declare that it has a continental shelf, because of the fact that the continental shelf is the land mass based on natural prolongation that extends sometimes as far as the continental outer limits of the continental shelf, which could go up to 350 nautical miles. CARICOM states, firstly, in its attempt to develop its economy, and now the blue economy, because it's a term of art, probably about a little more than 20 years old, have sought to put their houses in order by delimiting where there are overlapping claims, their continental shelf regime. There are examples of the states which have done so either through arbitration, where negotiations broke down, like in the case of the Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago, maritime boundary limitation negotiations, which went on arbitral tribunal in 2006. I had the pleasure of being part of the negotiating team and being part of the team that was before the arbitral tribunal established under Part 15 and Annex 7 of the convention. Guyana and Suriname has already settled their boundaries there, Trinidad and Tobago and Grenada by negotiations, right? So we have seen, for example, benefits accruing from CARICOM countries in terms of the exploitation of the continental shelf. We have seen Trinidad and Tobago, firstly, as more than 100 years ago, an oil and gas producer, at one time one of the largest in the Commonwealth. And now we are seeing Guyana as a new kid on the block, benefiting from the exploitation of the resources of the continental shelf, right? One would hope that the revenues acquired from the exploitation of these oil and gas resources, which are not only finite, but which are based on the discussions of climate change and the need for clean energy, the oil and gas might be on their way out. I don't know how many decades again they might last. So it's important that we use this regime, this legal regime of the continental shelf, to use resources from oil and gas for other aspects of the development of the blue economy. But we spoke about up to 200 nautical miles from the baseline from which the breadth of the territorial sea is measured. But a state could extend its continental shelf jurisdiction to the outer limits. And the outer limits of the continental shelf could go as far as 350 nautical miles from the baseline from which the breadth of the territorial sea is measured. Yeah, but between 200 and 350, a state would have to provide geological and geomorphological evidence within the legal regime of Article 78, paragraph 8, to a body called the Commission on the Limits of the Continental Shelf, thereby presenting this information to this Commission on the Limits of the Continental Shelf, established by UNCLOS, by the Montego Bay Convention, by saying, hey, we have geological and geomorphological evidence which says that we could move beyond 200 and we could establish the outer limits of our continental shelf beyond up to 350 nautical miles. This is our geological evidence. This is our geomorphological evidence. The Commission on the Limits of the Continental Shelf in turn would say, yes, you have satisfied the criteria. You are able to establish the outer limits at 250 nautical miles. Trinidad and Tobago has made a submission to the Commission. Barbados has made a subcommission. I know Guyana, when I was at the UN, Guyana had made a partial submission, and other states have made submission. Why is that so important? If you are able as a state, party to the convention, to establish your continental shelf jurisdiction to the outer limit, to 350 nautical miles, you're in a position now to explore and exploit those resources beyond 200 nautical miles, up to 350 nautical miles for the development of your blue economy, yeah, utilizing the resources. But hey, we live in a region where there's so many adjacent and opposite states. So you'll find that even where you get, if you get as a state, a favorable recommendation to extend your continental shelf beyond 200 nautical miles, up to 250 nautical miles, you may find overlapping claims with other states which have been given favorable recommendations to extend their continental shelf jurisdiction up to 350. So there's an opportunity to explore and exploit. But the challenge would be if there are overlapping claims up to 350, between 200 and 350, these states would have to now get together and have negotiations to delimit this extended part of the continental shelf. No dissimilar to negotiations they would have done, the negotiations they undertook to delimit the continental shelf up to 200 nautical miles. So this is what the future would present in terms of the CARICOM states and the continental shelf. So we have dealt within national jurisdiction and how the resources within national jurisdiction could be utilized for the development of the blue economy. We have looked at the opportunities, and not all of the opportunities, but some I must say, because this paper is not exhaustive, and we have looked at some of the challenges. But beyond national jurisdiction, there's an area called the area. It is written in capital A, or to use a modern expression, uppercase A, deliberately, as to not confuse it, with any other maritime area or any other maritime zone. This area beyond national jurisdiction class is found, is established within Part 11 of the Montego Bay Convention of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, and is also governed under the 1994 Implementing Agreement of Part 11 of the Convention. Let me give a little history here. When the convention was open for signature and adopted 40 years ago in December of this year, it'll be 40 years, a number of the industrialized countries did not participate, did not ratify the convention. Yeah? So the Secretary General of the United Nations at the time appointed an Under-Secretary General, and the Under-Secretary General was responsible for leading the negotiations for the adoption of the 1994 Agreement on the Implementation of Part 11 of the Convention. Yeah, and as a consequence of that, a number of the industrialized countries came on board, they ratified the convention, and they became part of the 1994 Implementing Agreement. Why is that so important, the CARICOM? The convention, as supported by the 1994 agreement, established the International Seabed Authority. For those of you who don't know, The headquarters of the International Seabed Authority is in Kingston, Jamaica. It's the only global headquarters established in the global south outside of UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program in Kenya. So we are proud as CARICOM people to have the Seabed Authority located in Kingston, Jamaica, right? This authority is responsible on the party level of the convention and in 1994 implementing agreement on party level of the convention to organize and control and administer and manage the resources beyond national jurisdiction, which according to Article 136, the area beyond national jurisdiction and the resources are the common heritage of mankind. To use a more modern terminology, the common heritage of humanity, humankind. Article 133 of that convention defines resources to be mineral and gaseous resources and so on, right? So if it is the common heritage of mankind, the question that you should be posing to me is, could a state alienate or delimit this area? The answer is no. The Seabed Authority is established as a custodian for these resources, right? And the mandate of the Seabed Authority is to develop a regime for deep seabed mining. I go to the meetings every year. We meet more than once a year now as the Seabed Authority. And over the 28 years of its existence, it has been putting in place very partly to some extent the regime. But the regime that is put in place first are regulations for exploration and prospecting of these rare earth minerals, cobalt, ferromanganese, crust, sulfides, and so on. Some of the minerals which some scientists have advanced are crucial towards the advancement of the blue economy, are important to assist us in addressing matters relating to climate change. Some scientists have argued that the carbon footprint of seabed mining would be less than the carbon footprint of terrestrial mining or land-based mining, and consequently, that might be the way to go. Others have argued that seabed mining might be deleterious to the environment, and as a consequence of that, there should be a moratorium and so on, notwithstanding that the Seabed Authority, the members of the Seabed Authority have been negotiating the exploitation code, which is the code that will require extraction of the minerals. They are ensuring that there are regional environmental management areas. There are the employment of the EIAs, that is environmental impact assessment, and other precautionary approaches to mitigate, to reduce the incidence of any severe fallout to the marine environment that would affect biodiversity and so on and so forth, right? The advantage.
Eden, just to say that we have maybe about 5 to 7 minutes, and I would want to see if the audience had any questions before the next speaker will come. But he can come a little bit later at 10:30, but I just wanted to give you a sense of the timing.
5 to 7 minutes. I told you I had about 50 minutes from when we spoke. Anyhow, so the advantages of CARICOM participating is that CARICOM is able to shape the future regime of seabed mining, which belongs to everybody, not only a few states. Sadly, not many CARICOM states attend the meetings in Kingston, Jamaica, of the Seabed Authority. Less than 5 CARICOM states participate. When one juxtaposes that with what happens to some smaller states from the Pacific, like Nauru and Tonga and so on, who live all the way in the Pacific and they come to the meeting, right? CARICOM needs to ensure that there's greater participation in the work of the Seabed Authority and so on, to ensure that what is being established is important to us. Then there's another body established by the convention called the Enterprise. The Enterprise is the body established under Article 170 of the convention. It is supposed to be the vehicle whereby all developing countries will be able to participate in exploration and prospecting and exploitation of the resources of the deep sea bed. Sadly, the 1994 agreement, which modified the convention, I prefer to say, de facto amended the convention, downgraded the enterprise, and the enterprise does not have the type of financial resources or has no financial resources in terms of being there to participate adequately and to be a vehicle to assist CARICOM countries. If that does not happen, CARICOM states and other developing countries would not be in a position to benefit adequately from the resources beyond national jurisdiction, which is the common heritage of mankind. What has happened is that they've appointed an individual called Eden Charles to be the special representative to seek to promote the operationalization of the enterprise. CARICOM needs to push for that. I'm mixing up my slides here. We're going to continue now. Then we have something that's currently undergoing called the agreement on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity beyond areas of national jurisdiction, the BBNJ agreement. It seeks to do what the regime of the seabed authority is not doing. It seeks to provide a regime to flesh out the provision of the convention on how we should conserve and sustainably use marine biological diversity beyond areas of national jurisdiction. The core of the agreement must include marine genetic resources, including question of sharing of benefits, and we in CARICOM have advocated that common heritage of mankind principles must be the principle used to share benefits. The industrialized countries are saying, no, it should be based on the freedoms of the high seas, part 7 of the convention. CARICOM needs to continue to hold on to the principle of the common heritage of mankind. I respectfully submit in order to ensure that the BBNJ agreement provides the benefits that we would want to see. If common heritage of mankind principles are left out of the BBNJ agreement, we would have the same fate. CARICOM developing countries would suffer the same fate as what happened under the 1994 agreement when the enterprise was downgraded. So we need to deal with that and continue to be robust in our representation at the future negotiations. Then we have something called the Commission of Small Island States on Climate Change and International Law. This commission was established on the margins of COP26 last year in Scotland, and the founding members, Antigua, Barbuda, and Tuvalu. Since then, others have come on, Vanuatu, and so on and so forth. We need more CARICOM states to come on. What this commission is doing, and I'm a member of the Legal Experts Committee of the commission, we are seeking to formulate an advisory opinion before the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea, which is a special purpose tribunal, a special purpose court established by UNCLOS, to see whether states parties to UNCLOS are in breach of their obligations in terms of protection of the marine environment, and their failure, or whether their failure to protect the marine environment is now responsible for the type of deleterious effects of climate change that we're having. We are hoping to be successful. The Committee of Legal Experts that I'm a part of provides free legal advice to any small island developing states wishing to answer any questions in terms of liability and obligations emanating from other states parties under the convention. All right. What's next for CARICOM? CARICOM needs to continue to implement the regimes that I've described before, implement rigorously the regimes provided under international law, pass the legislation and the administrative mechanism, because sometimes there's legislation, but there's no administrative measures to give effect to the legislation. CARICOM has to continue to advocate more robustly for capacity building and transfer of marine technology in existing instruments that CARICOM have signed and ratified, and future instruments as BBNJ instrument, ensure that marine transfer of marine technology and capacity building are legally binding provisions and not based on voluntarism and so on. CARICOM needs to mobilize finance in developing the blue economy sector, and CARICOM needs to continue to ensure that it gets its just due in all of these international mechanisms. I had to run faster than using Bolt to finish this presentation, but I thank you. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Hi, Eden. No, thank you so much. I think all we wanted to do is make sure that we could get to some of the questions of the audience, and I just didn't want to deprive them. But I think if you can share your slides, maybe anything that was not able to be presented orally, at least people will be able to have a look, and we get in some very spontaneous claps, which often happens when students or participants are happy with the presentation. So I see in the chat, and we have 5 minutes for the Q&A. Please, if you would like to ask a question directly, I can unmute you. But there is a question, Eden, in the Q&A already. I don't know if you've managed to see it.
All right, I'm seeing a comment from a good brethren of mine from St. Lucia, Michael Andrew. A very interesting comment about UNCLOS 3 and opening up the possibility of 4 small states leveraging the extended 200-mile EEZs and of the ocean and so on, coming out of mankind. But us, we are in total agreement. We are in sync as usual with this point vis-a-vis other states. I expressed disappointment and so on about a number of the provisions have not been implemented by industrialized countries to the detriment of CARICOM and so on. And he's speaking about taxation and so on. I'm not sure Makil had a specific question.
The last
Thank you very much, Makil, for your comments.
I think he had a question. He wanted maybe more rhetorical, but he said, is this an issue of the failure of global and regional governance or the strengthening economic hegemony of industrialized countries?
I think it's a combination of the two. Because the industrialized countries historically have been hegemonic and they will continue to be hegemonic. But notwithstanding the limited capacity sometimes of small states, if we act in concert and together, if the full benefit of CARICOM, and I've seen it, I led the negotiation for CARICOM on the Arms Trade Treaty of the United Nations, and we were able to get provisions in that Arms Trade Treaty, which others didn't want. Sadly, the Arms Trade Treaty is not being implemented effectively in the Caribbean at this position. So yes, Makil, I agree with you, hegemony, but I think our governance structure in the Caribbean must improve. We must not only walk, we must not only talk the talk, we must walk the talk and demand or pound of flesh. We must not compromise politically for some change here by losing the bigger set of money somewhere else. And that has happened, for example, a number of Eastern Caribbean countries have compromised their EEZ because of the fact that they failed to tell a particular country to the south of Trinidad and Tobago that a bird island is not an island. It's a rock. Yeah, it's a rock and does not meet the requirements of Article 121 of the Convention on the Law of the Sea, the Montego Bay Convention. And because of that, what is happening is that a number of those countries around Boardwalk, so-called Avis Island, are unable to fully enjoy the exclusive economic zones. And a lot has been written on it, but CARICOM needs to wake up on that as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Any more questions, Dr. Remy?
Sure. I think one of the questions, there is another question. I think Silna Dick wanted to get a little bit more about the work you're doing or being done by COSIS.
All right. The COSIS work is critical. What you have, for example, and there are 2 processes there. Vanuatu, another Pacific small island state, is seeking an advisory opinion through the United Nations General Assembly. I think it might be called, the vote might take some time towards the end of this year. Posing a question to the International Court of Justice in terms of the liability of some states for pollution and so on, for actions which are affecting the oceans and thereby inhibiting our ability to fully take advantage of those resources existing there. What COSIS, what is the Commission of Small Island States on Climate Change and International Law, through its legal expert committee, we are formulating an advisory opinion to the International Tribunal to the Law of the Sea. For example, there are specific obligations in this document here, Montego Bay Convention, which require states, parties to the convention, individually and collectively to preserve and protect the marine environment. And many countries have not done that, many states parties. What do you advise your opinion, and I can't give you the specific questions because we are formulating it, it's confidential. What this advisory opinion would do, it'll be a narrower advisory opinion than the one coming under the UN General Assembly. This one to the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, this special body established by the convention, would assist us in indicating whether state A is in breach, whether state B is in breach. You may say, audience, that the advisory opinion are not binding. It is true the advisory opinion are not binding. But they are persuasive. And sometimes persuasion is so important, you could use persuasion to politically name and shame people. Let me give an example. The Chagos Island advisory opinion, which indicated that the United Kingdom did not fully give Mauritius its total territory, and Mauritius ceded it, got its independence, and maintained the Chagos archipelago for itself and allow the United States and so on to have military bases in those areas. That advisory opinion has been very clear as to the issue of decolonization and the shortfall when Mauritius got independence in the UK, properly handing over what is conceivably, what is factually Mauritian territory, that is the Chagos archipelago. And we are seeing movement of that advisory opinion to ensure that Mauritius is granted its full territory, which is sacred under international law. I am saying that there's a need for CARICOM countries to join the Commission of Small Island States on Climate Change and International Law. Antigua is one of the founding members, a CARICOM country. It's the only CARICOM country involved. There are Pacific countries involved. What is CARICOM doing? This reminds me of the point Michael was making about governance issues. This is something that a CARICOM country, one of the smaller territories in CARICOM, has taken the bull by the horns, done the work, and helped to formulate this commission. Because what we are saying is that notwithstanding the Paris Agreement and the UNFCCC, we are not gaining sufficient traction. Yeah, despite the work being done by the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. We want states to own up to their liability in terms of their failure to honor obligations, pre-existing obligations, legally binding obligations under the convention. And this is what the Commission for Small Island States and International Law through the Legal Experts Committee are hoping to do. We have come together, we have put together a group of international renowned, international lawyers, experts in the law of the sea and so on, to assist all states. The question is, where is CARICOM? Outside of Antigua and Barbuda, no other CARICOM country have acceded the convention. All you need to do, the Secretary General of the United Nations is depository. You can go on the website, research the agreement on the establishment of the Commission of Small Island States on Climate Change and International Law, and that tells you what are the procedural requirements for becoming a party to this important instrument. Yeah. Hello?
No, excellent. Thank you very, very, very much, Eden. We're at 10:30. I think we're a little bit, well, we're good. We're in good place for the next speaker. But before, as I wait for him to join, there's one follow-up question from Silna, if you have 5 more minutes. The question from her is, what is the scope of the remedies if a breach is found?
Well, that's important. If a breach is found, since this is virgin territory, I'm not too sure exactly what type of remedies the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea would formulate, because by way of the advisory opinion, it would not be a case before the court seeking to call upon a state to do X or Y, but remedies could include, I hope, restitution, compensation, and so on. Perhaps, if it is negotiated properly, we could call for capacity building and transfer of marine technology, which would be more practical, more useful remedies, and so on. But I can't really indicate what approach the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea would utilize, would adopt in seeking to determine whether there's a breach. The first thing is that all states parties to UNCLOS must support the move for this advisory opinion by COSIS in terms of bringing it before the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. That's very important. I think you're muted, Yaniv.
Oh, thank you. This has been a wonderful end to the week. Well, you're the penultimate guest speaker. It has been a wonderful penultimate lecture for the week. I think what it was able to do is remind everyone of what the regime is. At the end of the day, it's really important to have legally enforceable obligations as it relates to how CARICOM protects, but also can sustainably use its blue economy, and also to point us to the future, and in a sense, spur us a little bit to action in militating our governments and our persons responsible for the blue economy to act in our interests, sometimes and perhaps maybe in much more forceful ways than we have done in the past. So Eden, thank you so much, and thanks again for the inconvenience of asking you to present first, but I think you did a wonderful job. And so I don't know if you're able to stay for the rest of the presentation, but if you are able to, it would be wonderful.
Well, I would have loved to, but I have to go back and do what I should have been doing while I was giving this presentation. Since I brought it up early, I shift things around.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you. As
you.
usual, all in the service of the Caribbean people and those who are sympathetic and support the agenda of the CARICOM civilization, which I'm a firm believer in.
We appreciate that. And if you are able to share your slides, and apologies if you had to rush through them, it would be great to be able to share it with the participants.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Eden. And
take care.
All right. All the best.
Bye.
I'm really pleased now to welcome our final speaker for the week. I don't know, Professor, if you're able to open up your video.
Yeah. Can you see me now?
I can see you. We will need to name you. The task.
Yeah, I'm the whole panelist, right?
You are one of the panelists. Indeed. Your task is fortuitously to bring the entire week to a close with your talk.
All right.
No pressure on you at all. No pressure.
Yeah. No pressure.
Everyone, help me in welcoming Professor Rashid Sumaila, who is a professor and Canada Research Chair, Tier 1 in Interdisciplinary Ocean and Fisheries Economics at the Institute for Oceans and Fisheries and the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs at the University of British Columbia. So his research focuses on bioeconomics, marine ecosystem valuation, and the analysis of global issues such as subsidies to fisheries, marine protected areas, illegal fishing, climate change, marine plastic pollution, which we heard a little bit about, and oil spills. He has experience working in fisheries and natural resource products in Norway, Canada, and the North Atlantic region, Namibia and Southern African region, Ghana, Hong Kong, West Africa, and the South China Sea. He received his PhD from the University of Oregon and his BSc in quantity surveying from Ahmadu Bello University. Some of his accolades include that he is winner of the 2022 Royal Society of Canada's Miroslav Romanowski Medal for Scientific Work relating to environmental problems. He's done a number of interviews and written a number of op-eds on plastic pollution. So when we invited Professor to speak, we wanted him to kind of point us in the direction of, where all of these issues as a matter of the future development of the blue economy from his vantage point of not only seeing it from the region's perspective, but really situating the Caribbean within the broader framework and landscape of the future for the economy of the blue economy. And I know he's going to approach this through a very specific lens, and looking at the economics. I think he mentioned fisheries and equity issues, but I know he's also going to bring it wider to look at the future and opportunities and challenges. So without further ado, over to you, Professor, and thank you so much for waking up so early in British Columbia to join us. And you're unmuted. You're muted, sorry.
Yes, okay, now you can hear me, right? I was saying thank you very much. Waking up early is not anything new. This is normal in these days of Zoom, right? You just wake up, and at least it's better than being at an airport late or early. So thank you for the invitation. And this is a title. I finally ended up with this title. So we're going to, I prepared a few slides just to get us going. And as I go, you can interject with questions or comments, and hopefully we'll be able to get through this. I know you've been doing this for the whole week, right? And so you must be tired now. So let's get going.
I just wanted to, somebody wanted to speak. Was it Royden whilst Professor is uploading his slides? Did you still want to speak? I think you put your hand down. I don't know if you had an urgent question. Okay, so if you don't, can you put it into the chat?
All right. So you will be watching the chat, right? For me, please, right? Will
Yes.
you? Yeah.
Yes, you will.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, so that's the title. And like I said, I prepared a few slides touching on different aspects of the blue economy, looking into the future, how to balance all that we want to do with the ocean and life in the ocean and future generations. You know, there's so many connections here. So hopefully I'll get some thoughts in, and we can then discuss them. So my first big point is that we have a large interconnected global ocean. So I was starting off with this picture of the ocean, and which you know, but it's always good to start somewhere. So we are the ocean, and when I talk about blue economy, I'm using the ocean. I hope that is how you've been seeing it. But actually, this is all about the aquatic system, because we have freshwater systems and so on. So, but here is mainly the blue ocean, the global ocean. And my first point is that it's a large interconnected global ocean. So if you're in the Caribbean, or you are in Africa, or in Asia, you do your stuff in your part of the ocean, but essentially we are connected. And it's a huge part of the surface of the earth, 70%, right? So I tell students, if you mess up 70% of your exam, you don't go anywhere, right? All of you here participating, with 30% score, you wouldn't be on this panel. That is for sure, right? So you cannot mess up 70% of something you care about. And so to ensure that our ocean is sustainable so that it can support trade, sustainable trade, equitable trade is crucial. So that is my first point. The second point is that this is my basic model of the blue economy, essentially. If you look at that, you look at this, you have the marine environment. We, the people, when we talk about the blue economy, there are two things we do when we go to the ocean, two main things. One is we take the things we want, the things we need, the things we desire, all the good stuff, the fish, the oil and gas, and all that is in the ocean and in the larger environment. We take them into our economy, we trade with them, we process them, we do all the things we do, not only economically, but also culturally and socially. And at the end of the day, what do we produce? We produce waste. And where do the waste go? They go back to the environment, to the marine environment, to the ocean. So I like to say that from the ocean comes good things. The good things we trade, you know, we sell to each other, we transport, we ship around the world to make the money we need and all that, right? We take them in and we pump out waste. And for us to be able to do this, forever, because I'm in the infinity fish. If you've seen, I'll talk about infinity fish. The environment is renewable. The ocean can continue helping us and serving us forever. We can trade all these goods forever, but only if we don't overtake and only if we don't overpollute. If we keep overpolluting and overtaking, we are gonna kill this system that is so useful to us. So that's my second point. And this is our basic model of the blue economy, essentially. So here, I'm sure my colleagues, other instructors have mentioned all the different sectors. For me, the blue economy is essentially any economic activity that is taking place on the water, below the water, adjacent to the water, connected to the ocean or the aquatic system is actually part of the blue economy. And these are some examples. Never comprehensive list because these things are not fixed, right? From time to time, we discover new things and better ways to use the environment in the blue economy. So this is just a list which I'm sure you've seen before many times, just to put things in place. So, and you can see this in so many ways. For example, we have traditional blue economy activities such as fishing, which has been going on forever, right? And then you have some emerging ones. People are talking about deep sea mining, you're talking about tidal wave energy, and so on and so forth. So this is a dynamic field also. The blue economy is dynamic. We keep discovering something. But I just wanted to put this out here just to kind of give a picture of the general, the general picture of. So then this is a picture. I'm really thinking a lot about the ocean as a supporter of the blue economy. And when you look at blue economic activities, I think you can divide them into activities that depend on life in the ocean and activities that don't depend on life in the ocean. So think about shipping. You know, shipping doesn't, once there's water, you can transport your stuff. But you cannot have a fishery based on wild fish when there's no fish in the ocean. So fishing, whale watching, shark watching, all those depend on life in the ocean. And so we need to understand this as we work our way through the blue economy into the future. So there is knowledge. There's the natural science, there's the social science, economics. We need the knowledge and in order to balance activities, blue economy activities that depend on life and those that don't depend on life. And this has been occupying my mind a lot. I'm actually co-authoring a paper now where we are looking at how the surge in the blue economy is likely to affect life in the ocean and how we can work to ensure that there is balance, that we do not trade off life in the ocean for activities that don't depend on life in the ocean. So that is this, and this is a food web. I'm just putting this as an illustration, because if you want to maintain life in the ocean, you've got to understand the food web, how they are connected. And so if you're digging for diamond or oil or deep sea mining, you have to be mindful of what will happen here. Because if you take this down, you are going to take the part of the blue ocean that depends on life in the ocean out of the fish trade that we want, right? We want the trade so that we can exchange and income and do the things we want to do. So that's another point here. Now, if you understand the natural system, you need to understand the economics. You need to understand the valuation. You need to understand trade. You need to understand the food chain. So I'm spending a lot of time on knowledge. We need to understand, and I know the Caribbean, developing countries, and African countries, I think we need to invest more in understanding our systems so that we know how best to use them in the blue economy to help us, not only those of us alive, but our children and grandchildren also. And the base of all of this is understanding the natural science, social science, economics. And so this is, for example, this is the cover of my book, which I published last October, I believe, 2021. And you see the title, Infinity Fish. You can say Infinity Blue Fish, Blue Economy. I think our goal, all of us on this panel, is to have a blue economy that is sustainable, that is equitably used, that goes on forever so that it also works for the future generation of people, right? And so this book, Infinity Fish, I make a very provocative statement. I start by saying that, look, I think fish is more valuable than diamond, just to provoke and to make a point. And here I'm simply talking about valuation, because if we really want to get the best out of our blue economy, the best out of trading goods and services from the blue economy, then we better understand and value these things properly. Because there are many things happening in the ocean, and if you don't get the valuation right, you are going to trade off something that is truly valuable, but because you didn't capture the value, you can trade it off to your own loss, you know. So here I say fish is more valuable than diamond, like I said, to just hit the point and make people wake up from. And how do I justify this? Number one, I say that fish is renewable, diamond is not renewable. All right, that there's no argument about that. At least in our lifetimes, diamond is not renewable. Okay, what does that mean? That means that you can go back. If you manage your fisheries sustainably, you can go to the ocean each year to take the fish and feed yourself and feed your family. You can do recreational activities forever. And anything that gives you benefit, even if it is small, over time, to infinity, mathematically, if you sum it, the benefit is infinity, right? You're trading forever. So the gain from trade is going to be there forever. And you can do that with fish because it's renewable. How about diamond? If you dig a ton of diamond today, or oil or gas, you take in a quantity, you cannot go back tomorrow and dig, or next year and dig the same ton of diamond. It's gone forever, right? You tell me, oh, I'll sell it and I'll trade it and then invest the money. And I say that, look, governments almost all over are running deficit. But at least you have the fish, it's like a trust. Each year it will drop you some benefit. And then even if you blow that year's benefit, next year another one will come. But if you blow your value of 1 ton of diamond, it's gone forever, right? So that is one. The second thing is that I think fish is valuable for many people, whilst diamond is actually valuable for a few. I give an example here. I made this point in Namibia, by the way. I was asked to give a talk, National Fisheries Day. And in Namibia, the diamond sector and the fishery sector are always arguing. Two blue economy activities because they dig diamond offshore, right? So these are blue economy activities, but they are conflicting because they operate on the same space in the ocean. And so they're always arguing with the government to get priority, right? And so if you look at Namibia, one company essentially digs out the diamond, DBS. They employ a few hundred Namibians, and that's it. Who knows where the benefits go, the foreign exchange and so on, right? But fish, every Namibian benefits from their fish. So what I did, I asked you a question on this panel. If we were in a room, I'll ask you, how many people have seen rough cut diamond in their lifetime? And most of the time when I say this in a room, virtually nobody, maybe 1 or 2 people. And I say, how many people have eaten fish this week? And it's virtually everybody, right? So fish is valuable for many, whilst diamond is. And this is important when we're going to have a future blue economy that really serves our purposes. We better get this valuation right. Otherwise, you will trade off the fish for the diamond, and then a few people run off with the benefit, leaving the bulk of the population in the Caribbean or anywhere else with nothing. So that is, as we think of our future and how we do it, we need to really be able to value our stuff more comprehensively, right? And this is another picture dwelling on the value. We all know that there's more and more information about carbon sequestration by animals and habitats in the ocean. This is just a figure in the paper, a famous figure in a published paper, I think, in the last few years, right? So not my paper, right? But here they identify the various ways that the ocean actually helps us absorb carbon, sequester it, take it down, a lot of channels here. And again, this is about valuation. So if you're thinking of the blue economy, how do you make sure that this value is not missed? Because it's not like catching fish and selling in the ocean, you know, or taking out people to watch whales. That one you have concrete market value, but this one does a lot of things to society, but we cannot measure it easily. Again, we need to get the valuation right, in order to create and support a blue economy that engages in fair trade among services and activities, and then fair trade for people, right? So that is this picture. And actually, we also need to think about the broad things happening in the world. In small land countries and large ocean countries like in the Caribbean, a lot of the impacts that you face, small countries in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia face, is coming from climate change. And actually, if you look at it, we contribute, or people living in these areas contribute very little to climate change, yet the impacts are shown here are on these countries. So the moral, ethical things. So as we think about our blue economy, we also have to link up to the larger things happening in the world, so that together we can put pressure to reduce this kind of big overall impacts that really affect us on the ground in our corners of the world, right? Climate change is one of them. In this paper, we try to say, put here by continent and country, the countries that will benefit most from implementing the Paris Agreement, against on the x-axis, the countries that emit the most in terms of CO2. And you can see that here, our kind of countries, Senegal, the Caribbean, and small island countries actually will benefit because the fish, for example, are leaving the tropics and going to the poles, so that is a loss, right? Meanwhile, if you look at the emissions, these countries are actually around here. So dealing with climate change will also be good for our blue economy, because that will relieve these countries from the pressure coming from there. And then you will be able to have a sustainable blue economy that can engage in mutually beneficial trade. Now, all these things I've said will not happen without adequate financing. So we need to have blue economy financing, ocean finance. I gave a talk, where did I give a talk? I think it's the African Development Bank. And I was telling them one of the things we need to do in the developing world is to encourage and train our youth to really get into finance, sustainable finance, creative finance, finance that works for these communities, right? Come up with ideas and how to mix and match things, right? I was in Paris last week, and this is a woman, Marie, has started her own, she was working for this big, I think one of the big financial institutions, and got fed up, left them, and she has started her small investment company that has two main goals. They invest and encourage sustainable ocean and non-ocean investment that are equitable. So they screen all their portfolios to make sure that you are not messing up vulnerable communities. You are not messing up women. You are not messing up the youth and developing country people. That's one. And that you are sustainable. And the thing they developed was quite creative. Actually, they asked me to be on the board of this. That's why I was in Paris. And And so they make it clear to their investors, this is our goal. So if you don't care about these two things, don't look at our investment offerings, one. And if you invest $10, they have two broad investment vehicles. One they call that the commons, and one is the investment, like almost a traditional investment, but screening for social equity and sustainability. But then if you invest $10, they tell you offhand 10%, $1 will go into a pot called the commons pot to support sustainability and social stuff. Nine will go into investment only to projects that do not mess up sustainability and do not increase inequality, right? And these are the kind of things. And this report I'm showing you is a report we did for the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean. And here we kind of played around with financing because, you know, the graveyard of all good plans is lack of finance. We know that in our parts of the world, right? So we need to be creative. And I really encourage and push us to, and when I talk to my African colleagues and now Caribbean colleagues, I say, we are richer than we think. We just need to find a way to harness these things and try to really invest and save whatever little thing we have, because that's where growth and progress comes, right? And I tell you, you'll be surprised how much we can actually mobilize for ourselves to do what we care about, rather than waiting for the outside world to come with resources. They can come with it, that's okay. But I think we have to generate internal financing vehicles because these are the most dependable, right? If somebody's giving money, they can stop giving you tomorrow. That is your own resources, you have more control. So I always spend time to talk about finance because without it, no blue economy will be sustainable and no trade will be sustainable, all right? Okay, so I'm getting to the end of my slide so we can have a conversation. So I thought about this, thinking about the future. What will be my dream scenario for the future of a blue economy where trade thrives and where trade actually meets the needs of the population, not just a few people running off with all the benefits. I don't care about that. I was telling one place I gave a talk. I mean, I give too many of these talks now. I don't even remember. But I was telling them, I don't care about Elon Musk going and saying he's the best trillionaire in the world. I care about all people meeting their needs first and foremost. So that is the thing. So what is my dream for the future blue economy and trade? I think the best scenario for me is an ocean that is clean, so as minimal pollution as possible, oil spills, plastic, and all the things, CO2, which is healthy, so it's teeming with life. So we shouldn't trade off life for shipping money or diamond money. We should find a way to balance this thing. So we'll keep life going and all the benefits to the blue economy from that side, whilst we find the best way to exploit and do activities, blue economy activities that don't depend on life in the ocean. So that will be one of my dreams. And then biodiversity is important. We cannot let our ocean and aquatic biodiversity go because of short-term benefits. So we really have to work hard because they give us values, a lot of non-market values that we don't even understand, not to talk about valuing. So we should commit to ensuring that whatever we do with our blue economy, don't destroy the biodiversity. That is crucial to a lot of the blue economy. So biodiversity is preserved and expanded, taking back some of the losses over recent decades and restoring ecosystems, because that is a valuable blue economy resource in ways we don't fully understand. I would also like to see supply chains that are of low carbon. So all the shipping that takes place on the ocean and the blue economy, we want all this to be low carbon as much as possible, because carbon can really destroy us. You just think of Florida, huh? And I think you guys living in the Caribbean, you know about these hurricanes, how destructive they can be. And all evidence is that climate change is increasing their frequency and their intensity. In fact, in Eastern Canada, for the first time, they got hit by a hurricane of the highest strength they've ever seen, right? So we want low carbon everywhere we can. And we want to support the circular economy, so there will be less waste, right? And trade can help in this. Trade can help in all of this, right? For example, if one country finds a way to do things in low carbon situation, these things can be traded across borders, so we can all benefit from it. Facilitate and economy that facilitates services, the trade of services, which are less intensive, less resource intensive than goods trade. What am I saying here? So supply chains are also low carbon, support circular economy, and facilitate services trade, which is less resource intensive, right? That's the dream. And first you have to dream, right? And then you put out little steps to help you achieve the dream. And that is what I'm talking about. Trade where, dream where the trade also contributes to maintaining diversity and resource sourcing and ability to adapt to markets. This is the beauty of trade, right? If there is crisis on one side, we can quickly move things around to make sure that people don't perish, right? So that's a very useful function of trade. And so we need good trade. There's good trade and there's bad trade. What is a bad trade? Bad trade is if a few people grab everything and run off with it. That, to me, is bad trade. But trade that is mutually beneficial to countries and to citizens of the countries involved, that will be good trade, and we need to encourage that. It also allows us to adapt to changing markets. We need to ensure that in that world, we have to do our best to eliminate all illegal blue economy activities, eliminate them. And please don't use our taxpayer money as subsidies that destroy the environment, that destroy the ocean, that deplete the fish. And this is one of, those of you who know me, this is one of the things I've spent over 20 years really working on, building databases with students and postdocs and colleagues, and analyzing in support of the World Trade Organization. And so this year, at least we got some agreement where people are assessing what it really means on eliminating subsidies. I don't want my dollar to go down to destroying the environment. No way. Right? There are many ways we can use the money to support people. I love to alleviate poverty. And there are ways to do this. I asked a minister of an African country or Caribbean country, I say, if you have $1 million to spend, is this where you want to use $1 million to support fishers to go take the last fish? Or do you use it to retrain people, to deal with hospitals and roads? There's so many things we can do with the money. Why use it this way? And you can support the people to transition and have a livelihood without taking down the environment. Import tariffs and regulatory barriers on trade in the environment and goods and services have been reduced substantially. So you want to reduce barriers to good trade, because then we can get the benefit of that, reasonable division of labor, so that we can share the benefits and all of us will be better off. So this is my little picture of the future of the blue economy and how it can enhance sustainable trade that is equitable, that benefits as many people in the world as possible. Now, my final slide. So this kind of summarizes some of the things I'm talking about. So you have shipping. We want to have smart shipping, which with less impact on the environment. If you can come up with an energy source that will power all the activities, blue economy activities, that doesn't contribute much to CO2, welcome. And it has to be inclusive, and it has to improve lives of all, not just a few. Like I've been saying, we have to harness renewable energy, right? And the ocean can play a role. People are experimental, tidal waves, and so on and so forth. And fisheries are important to all of us when it comes to blue economy, right? That's what most of us do. And create jobs, good jobs, you know. Just to give you a little bit, I had the privilege of talking almost right after Obama. That day was a crazy day. This was 2016 at the State Department, a big ocean conference. And John Kerry opened the conference, gave his talk, introduced President Obama, he gave his talk. So I was sitting almost like 1 meter away and we're smiling at each other, me and the president. And then after him, Leonardo DiCaprio gave a talk. And I tell you, my dear brothers and sisters, your little Rashid was the fourth person to talk that day. And this was, to me, this was my highlight. So, and one of the things I told them is, I think the blue economy, one of its main services to the world is the jobs it creates, especially in developing countries where young people, many millions will have nothing to do without blue economy activities, fishing, agriculture, sustainable agriculture, whale watching, and all those things. Without those, I told them, you remember how President Obama became gray very quickly, just 2 years into his presidency, right? I said he would have been grayer without this job. So jobs, sustainable jobs for the people is crucial here. And we have to have that in mind as we move into the future. Illegality should go, and conserve the marine life and ocean. I've talked a lot about that, and so on and so forth. So this is my last slide. And I think what I'll do here is to thank you all for the invitation and for listening to me with all my usual stuff, right? But I think this is cool. Thank you very much, Jan Eves, for really doing your best to get me to give this talk. I'm so happy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As I said, the spontaneous hearts and claps and emojis is such a warm way for us to end this course this week. I know you have to run off. Thank you so much for your time and your spirit and your energy. And we hope to get you another time.
It's been real fun. I mean, I love it. I love it. This is the kind of group I want to talk to every day, right?
Oh, that's
because we need to build us up. So thank you so much. And all right.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of day, and we'll be
the same. Wonderful weekend to you all. Yeah. Bye. Bye. See you.
Thank you. Thank you. So everyone, it's been a wonderful week. In order to close, I'm going to hand over to my co-facilitator, Dr. Wilkinson, who has some messages and thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I think that was a fantastic way to end. Incredible speech there. And I think it was great. I think the professor brought together a number of the conversations that we've had this week, a number of presentations, and bringing into the discussion of biodiversity and trade and some of the complexities that we've talked about this week. And it's really interesting to hear about some of those kind of unique topics, I guess, and some of the areas that we could move into. And I love the idea of I guess about selling what small island developing states have to offer as well, and hopefully some value being placed on that can be supported and funded in the future. So that's really great. So thank you all also for all of you for coming this week. It's been a brilliant week. We've had a lineup of incredible speakers, some, our global experts in the area of trade and the blue economy. We've had some great questions, great participation, and we know that it's been a big commitment. I think 3 hours a day is really a long time to kind of take away from work and from your personal commitments. So thank you so much for coming along. I've just sent out in the group chat there a link to the evaluation form. We'd be really grateful if you could just spend 5 minutes and fill that out. Let us know what you've enjoyed, any areas for potential future training that we could consider, and anything that we could improve on in the future. So that's in the chat there, so do let us know. You also have our email addresses, so please also feel free to email either of us with any of your feedback. And I think that's it. So thank you so much.
I want to say one thing, Andrea.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you for co-collaborating and doing this. I'm doing that publicly in front of everyone. So It's been a lot of work in the background, but it's been so worth it. You're a wonderful co-facilitator. A lot of you have been asking us about certification. Unfortunately, we didn't design this for certification, although I think there was so much information that we could have. But that's why we really would like you to give us your feedback, so that we can think about maybe doing it in some kind of way that it's maybe less intense, all in 1 week, spread it over a longer period of time, and get some sort of certification. And a lot of you have been asking us about making the PowerPoints and the presentations in terms of the video available. We may need to get special permission to let the PowerPoints available, but we will try to make the videos available on the website, the SRC website. And once that link is live, Andrea, who has been diligently communicating with all of you, and those of you who have registered for the course, will be able to at least access that on the website, and you can share it because it will be freely downloadable and available. And we wanted to thank also the IT people who have made it possible for us to host you over the week. You know, everything didn't go smoothly, but most things went smoothly. Apologies for the speakers who were not able to make it, but I think the content was so rich that maybe we didn't suffer too greatly. And now I'll hand over to you, Andrea, to close. Sorry.
No, I think you've summed that up nicely. Just thank you again for everyone for turning up, for committing to the week, for taking part in the participation in the discussions. I've seen from the registration details that quite a lot of you work in this area, and I know there's a vast amount of expertise. So hopefully we can carry on some of these discussions. You know, we could carry on with other courses and other events going forward. So do stay in touch. Do put your feedback on the evaluation form, and thank you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, your day.